What if a single Saturday changed how an entire town saw itself? Have you ever trusted a stranger for one safe hour and later wished you'd done something different? Have you ever watched a rumor spread faster than the facts? Tonight's story begins with small, ordinary choices, a swipe, a laugh over fries, the kind of late-night walk many of us take without a second thought, and ends with a community forced to question who they protect and who they blame. Claire Donovan taught 3rd grade. She coached kids' soccer and shelved books at the community library. Arjun Sethi had moved to Briarwood recently. He worked as a software engineer and loved photographing the town at night. They met on an app, met at the Red Lantern for a drink, and left the bar together after midnight. But by morning, Claire was found injured on a park bench. Arjun was gone. By noon, the internet had already told half the town what must have happened. If you care whether stories are told with care and fact, hit like and subscribe now. It helps this channel keep separating fact from noise. If you won't subscribe, tell us why in the comments. We need to understand what keeps people from following the truth. Stay with me. The one detail that reframes everything appears late in the investigation, and it shows how quickly a helpful act can become dangerous when hidden forces are involved. Briarwood sits halfway between a sleepy college campus and a ribbon of low-rise industry. On weekdays the town hums with professors, students, and commuting tech workers. On Saturdays, Main Street hosts farmers' stalls and the Red Lantern draws a mix of regulars and newcomers with its acoustic nights and an easy bar menu. People knew each other well enough that a new face was noticed, but not so well that strangers were automatically treated with suspicion. The town's public spaces. Maple Avenue, the pedestrian bridge over the river, the Riverwalk benches, felt familiar in the way small towns do. The bridge had been repainted 3 summers ago and was a favored route for evening walks. Local business owners swapped stories at the storefronts. Marcus Hale, who owned the Red Lantern, still remembered the names of most patrons. Civic life followed an unspoken rhythm: town meetings on Thursdays, school fundraisers in the gym, and neighborhood watch emails when someone reported a broken light. That normality is important because it's what makes the shock so severe. Residents pride themselves on neighborliness. They check in on elderly neighbors, volunteer for the library, and support the college's guest lectures. At the same time, the industrial area on the town's edge remained a blind spot for many. Stretching warehouses and parking lots that rarely saw daytime traffic suddenly seemed full of shadows in a different light. When danger appears where everyday life mixes with hidden industry, the lines between local gossip and investigative threads blur fast. Briarwood was not unused to news. The college paper ran features on professors and student startups. The mayor's office published monthly updates. But the town had never before been the center of a story that threaded together a first date, missing person alerts, a dashcam, and allegations that stretched beyond the community into networks most people assumed belonged to big cities. That collision, between the familiar and the unfamiliar, is what would strain trust across the town and force residents to choose between snap judgments and patient inquiry. Claire arrived at the Red Lantern a little after 9, wearing a sweater she often favored when the nights cooled. She took a seat in a corner where she could see the door and the stage. Marcus, behind the bar, poured craft cocktails and offered a warm greeting. He ran the place with the kind of steady authority that made regulars feel at home. Arjun came in a few minutes later carrying a camera and a small camera bag, polite and slightly shy. He smiled, introduced himself, and slid into the booth. Their first hour was ordinary in every honest way. They traded stories. Claire spoke about the art projects she organized at school. Arjun showed her photographs of old warehouses and river reflections, explaining how night shots captured parts of town most people didn't notice. They shared an order of fries and laughed at a joke about the bar's perpetually faulty jukebox. Nearby tables glanced briefly at them and returned to conversation. No one recorded anything unusual. At 12:45 a.m. they left together. The bar's door camera caught them exiting and walking north on Maple Avenue toward the Riverwalk. In a town used to familiar faces, their exit was unremarkable, two people leaving a bar after a pleasant evening. The route was common for late-night walks, and the pedestrian bridge over the river was a short cut that offered quiet and an attractive view. The tone of the date matters because it sets up a contrast. Two ordinary people, an ordinary space, and the sudden way ordinary nights can change. This contrast is critical later, when some will try to insist the facts prove a motive that never existed. Human details, small gestures, casual conversations, are the ones that make a tragedy bearable to imagine and harder to reduce to a headline. Before leaving the bar, a staff member later recalled a small moment. Arjun had shown Claire some images on his camera, and they paused to scroll through photos together. That detail, captured in split frames across multiple cameras and recollections, would become a central thread investigators would re-examine, and that would shape the direction of the inquiry. If you find value in thoughtful retellings, take a second to like this video. Help us keep thorough coverage where it matters. The timeline is the backbone of any investigation, but here it breaks into conflicting pieces. The bar door camera logged Claire and Arjun leaving at 12:45 a.m. A pedestrian bridge camera recorded two figures crossing at 1:17 a.m., walking side by side. Other surveillance, shopfront reflections, a nearby traffic camera, filled in additional angles. At first glance, the feeds created a clean sequence: pub, walk, bridge, silence. Then fragments appeared. A neighbor's porch camera showed a lone figure pausing by the bridge shortly before the couple arrived. A shop window reflection showed something small being moved near the edge of the pavement as the couple passed. Those visuals were grainy, they didn't give identity, only suggestion. 2 minutes could separate clarity from confusion on the footage. As investigators stitched images together, they noticed timing discrepancies. Some devices recorded at slightly different clocks, some footage lagged, and a few timestamps required correction against verified time sources. Human memory added to the fragmentation. A late-night jogger claimed at first to have seen 3 people on the bridge. Later, when shown the clip, she revised her memory. Another witness said they heard raised voices near the river, while another insisted the night was quiet. These fractures matter because they create space for competing narratives. In a small town and used to high-profile investigations, eyewitness accounts spread quickly into public threads and reshaped what people believed. A single grainy clip can become a decisive image online, and when camera feeds conflict, imagination rushes to fill the gaps. That rush would complicate the investigators' work, and affect Claire's life. At 7:20 a.m., a jogger discovered Claire on a bench near the southern overlook. She was in the same clothes from the night before, her coat damp, her cheek bruised, and a small cut on her palm. She was disoriented and could not provide a clear account of where Arjun had gone. Paramedics treated her at the scene and transported her to the hospital. Medical staff later diagnosed concussion and severe shock. Her injuries were not life-threatening, but the nature of the wound suggested physical struggle. Claire's memory was fractured in patches. She recalled small slivers, fragments of light, a sudden weight against her wrist, and a distinct sound she could not identify. She could not say whether the last person she saw leaving the scene was leaving on foot or by vehicle. That gap left room for both speculation and careful investigation. At the hospital, friends and family gathered. Marcus stopped by after calling the bar's staff and learning about the discovery. The town responded in a way small towns often do. Neighbors organized rides, school colleagues offered support, and someone posted an update in a local group asking for anyone with information to contact the police. The initial instinct was to help, but in a matter of hours, helping would become entangled with rumor. Claire's state, confused, shaken, and only partially aware of what had happened, placed investigators at a difficult starting point. Her inability to provide a complete timeline meant detectives had to rely on cameras, cell tower pings, and the patchwork of witness statements. That reliance on fragments would produce multiple plausible stories, each demanding scrutiny. If you care about victims getting patient, fact-based attention, subscribe now. If you think this doesn't matter, type Y, tell us what would change your mind. Arjun's apartment was quiet the next morning. His car, which he had driven to the bar, was parked in the lot and left unlocked. His phone initially pinged nearby cell towers tracing him toward a taxi stand and then, in a puzzling jump, toward the industrial fringe on town's outskirts. Investigators followed the data and later received a tip from a taxi driver who reviewed dashcam footage. The dashcam showed a backseat passenger matching Arjun's description stepping into the cab around 2:45 a.m. The passenger sat quietly and appeared pale. The driver noted the man accepted the ride without conversation. The taxi drove into and then out of the industrial area. Near the end of the trip, travelers in a different car reported seeing a pickup double back near a side road. This taxi footage provided a critical piece of sequence, but not yet motive. Was Arjun heading somewhere voluntarily? Had he accepted a ride from someone he trusted? Or was he abducted? With cell pings, dashcam clips, and glimpses from other cameras, detectives began to place Arjun's last known movements on a shaky map. Friends and co-workers of Arjun reported he had not logged into work channels that morning and that his email activity had been unusual in the preceding weeks, more late-night messages and photography notes. His mother in Ohio and relatives in Mumbai were contacted, adding urgency to the missing person inquiry. For a town that valued community calm, the combination of an unexplained disappearance and a scatter of digital breadcrumbs was alarming. Before detectives could issue a full report, Briarwood's social feeds were ablaze. Screenshots from the bar camera circulated. A local forum speculated loudly. Two factions formed quickly. One group suggested Arjun had been responsible for Claire's injuries, another warned about xenophobic posts targeting an outsider. The hashtag threads intensified the division. Influencers and local commentators amplified accounts, some accurate, some not. Rumors that Arjun had a criminal past or that Claire had been careless swirled with little evidence. The mosque and the college's international student office reported harassment aimed at people of South Asian descent. The mayor urged restraint. The police asked people to preserve CCTV footage. This online frenzy had real consequences. Witnesses changed their stories after reading posts. CCTV footage was shared without chain of custody protection, complicating later forensic use. Emotions hardened into narratives. Some wanted quick arrests, while others demanded patience. That push-pull would shape how evidence was received and how the media reported events. If you're watching this because you want truth over viral anger, pause and hit like. If you don't plan to subscribe, tell us why below. Your reason matters to how communities learn to demand fair coverage. A local man, Caleb Myers, became a person of interest when neighbors reported seeing him near the Riverwalk that night. Caleb had a record for petty theft and instability. He was known in town by appearance if not by name. During a search of his pickup, officers found a hoodie matching the bar's lost and found inventory and traces of a fast-acting sedative in the truck bed. The hoodie included small smudges that later underwent forensic testing. Neighbors remembered hearing raised voices in the industrial area at odd hours, and a few recalled seeing Caleb's truck moving slowly through the parking lots. That combination drew suspicion and led to an arrest. Caleb denied knowing anything beyond an argument he'd had with someone earlier that night over a monetary dispute. His account had gaps, both in time and in specifics. When forensic testing returned some confirmation of sedative traces, the narrative seemed to tighten. A man with a history of petty crime found with items and substances connected to a suspicious disappearance. For many in town, the case appeared solved in outline. Yet detectives remained cautious. Evidence can mislead if context is missing, and motivation was still unclear. Even a strong forensic link does not always explain why someone acted in a certain way or whether they were part of a wider set of actors. If you believe investigations should follow evidence, not gossip, share this video so more people see how fragile early conclusions can be. As investigators dug into Arjun's devices, an unexpected picture emerged. His laptop and camera included photos of industrial storage yards, license plates, and nighttime handoff points. Messages revealed communication with a regional nonprofit that investigated forced labor and trafficking. Notably, Arjun had been collecting material he intended to use on a personal blog, evidence, he believed, that could help expose illicit activity on the town's industrial edge. Metadata from image files provided timestamps and GPS markers that placed Arjun at several locations near warehouses in the weeks before his disappearance. He had taken detailed photos of certain vehicles and arranged meetings with individuals who might know more. The tone of his messages suggested caution. He worked quietly, attempting to document suspicious activity without drawing attention. For investigators, those findings created new lines of inquiry. Was Arjun's presence in the industrial area purely journalistic curiosity? Had his documentation provoked a reaction from individuals who wanted the activity kept private? Or had he been collaborating with a wider group conducting an informal sting? Each possibility carried different implications for motive and culpability. The forensic team also examined Arjun's phone usage the night he disappeared. Calls were short and infrequent. There were text exchanges with people who described informal network activity and shared coordinates. Some messages hinted at a planned handoff, others suggested that Arjun might have been trying to verify a vehicle registration. This nuance complicated the initial reading of events. Arjun was not simply a random man on a date, he appeared to be a citizen investigator trying to gather proof. Detectives reassessed Caleb's role in this context. If Arjun had been documenting organized illicit activity, then the pickup truck and Caleb's opportunistic presence might only be part of a larger structure. That wider structure would be harder to identify and harder to prosecute. 2 weeks into the investigation, a new surveillance sweep produced a clip that reframed the case. A shopfront camera, capturing reflections as streetlights blinked, showed Claire and Arjun crossing the bridge. For several minutes before their arrival, a figure paced nearby, an individual who shadowed their path at a distance before moving closer as they passed the bridge's midpoint. In a brief reflection, the person appears to place a small object near Arjun's shoulder, an item that, when magnified, resembles either a wallet or a compact device. The footage was grainy, it demanded careful analysis. Forensic video experts enhanced the frames and synchronized timestamps across devices. The result suggested not a spontaneous attack but a staged exchange, an insertion of material while the couple moved through the dim light. The clip aligned with taxi dashcam times and with later accounts of a pickup circling the area. This twist forced the investigators to reconsider earlier assumptions. Arjun's presence in the industrial photos, combined with this staged exchange, supported a theory that he had been involved in documenting illicit handoffs or collecting evidence that night. The trailing person appeared to belong to a more organized group that used the Riverwalk as a brief, deniable meeting place. Caleb, investigators concluded, seemed to have intersected with that scene later. He may have discovered items or been involved opportunistically. The evidence suggested layers of involvement rather than a single, neat cause. If you care about how evidence changes narratives, hit like and share this. Too many stories end because people react before understanding. If you won't subscribe, tell us why below. Your answer matters. Claire's recollections remained fragmented. She could recall holding the camera bag at one point and trying to stop someone from taking it. She remembered a pressure on her wrist and a flash of light that could have been a phone or a street lamp. At the hospital, her injury suggested close contact with violence but not sustained combat. Her DNA was found on some items in the truck, but not in a pattern consistent with a protracted struggle. For Claire, the consequences went far beyond physical wounds. She withdrew from the public eye, closed social accounts, and needed months to regain any sense of normalcy. Her life, her classroom, her friendships, her routines, was altered by an event she could not fully explain. The compassion the town once offered needed to be matched by patience and a commitment to avoid turning her pain into speculation. Claire's experience also raised deeper questions. When someone tries to help by intervening, how should a community support them? How do we avoid turning survivors into objects of blame? Those questions would become central to Briarwood's reckoning. If you want survivors to receive careful attention, not blame, leave a comment pledging to wait for evidence before assuming guilt. Caleb was charged based on possession of items tied to the case and the forensic trace of sedative. Prosecutors argued he had delivered fatal blows after finding incriminating evidence. The defense insisted he had been framed and suggested broader criminal actors were the real culprits. The case moved slowly through pretrial motions as both sides sought to define the chain of custody for video and physical evidence. Detective Lena Ortiz, assigned to lead the case, emphasized the difficulty of separating opportunism from organization. A local prosecutor acknowledged the complexity, proving a connection between street-level acts and a concealed ring required cross-jurisdictional cooperation. As charges proceeded, other investigations opened into local trafficking allegations, and a regional task force began working with Briarwood police. The legal process exposed limits. Granular forensics take time, witness memories shift, and social pressure can both help and hinder justice. For many residents, the trial's pace tested their patience. For Claire, the courtroom became another arena of exposure she had hoped to avoid. The town responded in a mix of regret and reform. Public forums discussed how rumors had spread and how outsiders had been unfairly targeted. The mayor announced a partnership with a regional task force to investigate industrial crimes more thoroughly. Marcus upgraded lighting and coordinated neighborhood camera sharing protocols. The nonprofit Arjun had hosted a memorial and offered assistance to investigators. Yet social media wounds lingered. Some neighborhoods remained divided, others organized to support community vigilance. Briarwood learned a hard lesson: impulse judgments can cause harm, and the presence of a newcomer does not equal culpability. The town's reforms aimed to strengthen evidence collection and to build trust with minority communities. This story holds several practical lessons. Preserve evidence. If you have CCTV or dashcam footage, preserve original files and share them securely with police. Avoid snap judgment, social media rushes to conclusions. Wait for verified reporting. Support survivors, offer practical help and avoid asking leading questions that assign blame. Community vigilance matters. Partnerships between local police and regional task forces can uncover patterns that single investigators cannot. Ordinary courage can be dangerous. Citizen investigators can help expose wrongdoing, but they also risk becoming targets. Coordination with authorities reduces danger. If you value careful storytelling that prioritizes fact over fervor, consider subscribing and sharing this video. It's how we make sure small towns get accountable coverage without fueling division. If this story mattered to you, do 3 things: like the video, share it with someone who wants thoughtful coverage, and subscribe so we can keep doing this work. If you're not going to subscribe, tell us why in the comments. Honest answers help us improve and ensure we're serving the community. Would you have acted differently in Claire's place? What should towns do to protect both newcomers and longtime residents? Comment below. Thank you for staying with this episode. Next time we'll examine another case where quiet acts of courage collided with hidden systems, and how small choices shaped major consequences.